Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, so it's quite cold here actually. How is it at your places, people? How's the weather treating you?
It's fine enough, sir.
It's fine enough. Okay. One thing that which I feel which is very difficult to do is to concentrate, sit and study when the weather is cold outside, right? Because the moment you get into a warm blanket, your brain refuses to learn. It's like, let's go to sleep. That's a constant struggle. Okay, anyway, so any doubts to begin with? Any doubts in chapter 14 or chapter 13 that we did? We started with chapter 14, right, in the last class? Am I correct? Okay, so anyone who would like to give a quick summary for ecosystem? We didn't do much anyway, so it's going to be a couple of minutes or something, but I would like someone to just start, inaugurate, so that we can build on it. Anyone who would like to give a quick summary? How about you, Ellen? Because I think you're the only one who's speaking. That's not to discourage you from speaking, but
Yes, sir. So
yeah.
then,
Yeah.
so then we're learning about two types of ecosystem, which is a terrestrial and an aquatic one. And then you're talking about the different types of terrestrial and aquatic
But
ecosystems.
what is an ecosystem? But like, let's start from there because
Okay, yeah. So then, it's a self-sustaining system where it's a functional unit of nature where organisms interact with each other, and there are different types of interactions surrounded with biotic and abiotic components in the environment.
correct.
And then there are two types of ecosystems, and which can be in aquatic you can further divide them as freshwater and marine ones. And terrestrial we have four different types of ecosystems: forests, deserts, grasslands, and mountains. In aquatic we have lakes, rivers, glaciers, seas, oceans, and so on.
Yeah, correct. So this is what we just started with, right? Now we also told you some artificial ecosystems that are man-made, like aquarium, a big aquarium, and agricultural fields are an ecosystem that is entirely created by humans, because there's no agricultural field in the wild, right? We make these, we cut forests or we cut grasslands, or not cut, we exploit grasslands, remove them and make cultivable lands. Okay, so that's also, but these agricultural fields have interacting partners, so it becomes an ecosystem overall, but it's a human-made ecosystem. Okay, now from here in today's class, thank you so much, Ellen, for the summary. Okay, so today we will first, let's talk about why is it important to study about ecosystems at all, and what are we going to study about. So as you said, that ecosystem is a complex system where components of it interact with each other. Living components interact with living as well as non-living components, and it's self-sustaining. That's the most important point here. Now, if anything is self-sustaining, what do we mean by that? Can I say that a machine, you know, for example, like a car, is it a self-sustaining system? Yes, no? No, we cannot say it's a self-sustaining system, because whatever functions it does, to carry out that function, it needs some raw materials, for example, fuel, that it cannot produce on its own, correct? It needs to be given that from outside. That's why it's not a self-sustaining system. Do you understand what I'm saying, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So a self-sustaining system is that keeps that's take care of its requirements, demands, needs, and also because whenever there is a demand, to meet that demand, what will you do? Suppose there's a demand of food. What needs to be done to meet that demand? Simple. Like for us humans, what we do to meet the demands for food? Tell me. We produce it, right? But do we really produce it ourselves? Is the question. We just go to supermarket, buy food for us, but do we produce that food? No, right? It is produced by plants. Do you understand, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So an ecosystem has various components that have different roles. And one of the roles that some or the other component has to play in the ecosystem is the role of a producer. So anything that is required in the ecosystem, which it will be because it's a self-sustaining system. So first thing, there are components. So what are we going to study about in this chapter is, write down. We are going to study the components of ecosystem that function as a unit. So when I talk about components of ecosystem, sorry, I mean the following things. First is we need to know how the productivity in that ecosystem is being taken care of or is being regulated, because we need to produce a lot of things to maintain life and to maintain its interaction with the non-living environment. And if we are producing, so productivity in an ecosystem, is that clear? Yeah. And any ecosystem that produces must also be what? Excreting out waste, right? If there is a production, the cost of the production is that there is something that is a byproduct of the waste that has to be removed, or organisms will die. So though when they die, they become waste, right? A dead system, a dead organism is also, it needs to be decomposed. Like waste needs to be decomposed and dead matter also needs to be decomposed back. So decomposition. In an ecosystem. Okay. I hope everyone is with me. If you have doubts, please ask. Third is, between productivity and decomposition, there is lots of things happening in the ecosystem that majorly leads to two things. One is energy flow. So there is a flow of energy from one component component of ecosystem to another component of ecosystem. So that's energy flow. Okay. And the last thing that we'll be talking about is connected to this is nutrient recycling in ecosystem. Okay. So nutrients in ecosystem is always, it's dynamic. It's coming from one component to another and gets recycled back, then goes back to one system, feeds the other, then comes down, recycles back. Okay, this is how, because Earth is fixed, right? It is vast, but everything, Earth is a fixed quantity planet, right? It's not like things are infinite. Resources are never infinite anywhere. Okay, so recycling always happen for the nutrients. Make sense, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so to understand, let's build an ecosystem. Let's take an example of a lake or a pond. So taking into consideration What all things do you see in a lake or a pond? You tell me. Help me build a ecosystem.
Fishes, algae, some other
Fishes.
bacteria.
Yes, right. So you said fishes, algae, and very small bacteria. So are they all living together, are equally important, or doing similar kind of functions in ecosystem? Yes, no, what?
Sir, can you repeat?
I'm saying that all these uh, individual like species that you mentioned, like all these specific species that you mentioned, do they all have equal weightage in the ecosystem? Do they all do similar functions, or no? So you think that bacteria is as important as a fish or as an algae in an ecosystem? That's what I'm asking. If I built an ecosystem, where will I start with? Let's start with productivity. Who are the producers in a lake ecosystem?
Plants.
Plants, aquatic plants, right? You said algae, or there's something called as phytoplankton, right? Or aquatic plants. They are the producers of that ecosystem, which are submerged aquatic plants. Okay, not the plants which are at the bank of the pond, which they are terrestrial. They are not adding to the pond ecosystem that much. They are, but not significantly. And who are the consumers or decomposers in the ecosystem? So if something is being produced by plants, phytoplanktons, algae, it will also be consumed, right? So you see fishes. Someone give an example of fishes. These are consumers, correct? Other aquatic reptiles can be there, right? Or amphibians, or aquatic mammals if there are any. Aquatic mammals are mostly in rivers and oceans, not that much in pond, but yeah. So they are the consumers of the system. Do you understand what we are trying to do here?
Yes, sir.
What are the who are the decomposers?
Small bacteria.
Yes, it could be heterotrophic bacteria, right? It could also be fungi, right? Fungi is a good decomposer. Yes. Or
Yes, sir.
dinoflagellates. Have you studied about dinoflagellates in class 11th? Dinoflagellates.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they have flagella and they can move and go around and eat things or degrade things or decompose things, digest things. Okay, so you understood basically what we are talking about. So let's start with the first thing and study it in a little detail. Let's start with productivity in an ecosystem. Productivity and ecosystem. Okay, so any ecosystem which you take, whether it's an aquatic ecosystem or it's a forest ecosystem or a desert ecosystem, the primary production which happens it of the or and when I say production, I'm talking about the production of organic mass. Okay, biomass or organic matter. Is it clear, everyone? What do I mean by production? in every ecosystem, to produce anything, we need energy, correct? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
And where does that energy comes from in every ecosystem? Tell me. It's a very simple answer. You all know the answer. What is the constant source of energy for any ecosystem on the planet?
Sun.
Sorry?
Sun.
Sun. Yes, correct. The solar energy, which gives heat and light to the planet, shapes the ecosystems of the planet as well. So ecosystems, in fact, are dependent on the amount of sun, intensity of sunlight, the heat and light that it receives. But all primary producers, which are plants, okay, so they start with sun. Let's make sun. I still can't draw it good. Anyways, so sun gives energy to primary producers, and the reason they are called primary producers or producers is because they can harvest this energy. So this is a heat energy, correct? Heat radiation, heat or light energy or radiation energy. And these primary producers, which are basically your photosynthetic organisms, I should not just write plants because there are other organisms which are not plants, but they are photosynthetic, correct? Like blue-green algae. So photosynthetic organisms. So they convert this energy, which is your radiation or heat, into chemical. Okay, and this, they produce food, which is taken up by the primary consumers. And who do you think are primary consumers? So they are autotrophs, right? Photosynthetic organisms are, they are called autotrophs because they are self capable of making the food. Troph or trophic is associated with food or feeding things, and auto means self or automatic. So primary consumers are the herbivorous animals. Okay, they are heterotrophs, but since they are herbivorous, they will only feed on photosynthetic plants. Plants are photosynthetic, but they will only feed on plants, not on other animals. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
And then these primary consumers will be fed by secondary consumers. And who are these secondary consumers? Carnivorous animals. Okay, they are again heterotrophs, but they will feed on primary consumers. Sometimes systems also have tertiary consumers. What are tertiary consumers? They are called omnivores animals. What does omnivores means, people? You must have studied this, omnivores. What is omnivores? Anyone?
So both meat and non-meat eating animals.
Yes. So tertiary consumers actually can feed on. So primary consumers feed on primary producers, secondary consumers feed on secondary consumers. Oh, sorry, primary consumer. Tertiary consumers can feed on secondary consumers, can feed on primary consumers. They can also feed on primary producers. You understand? That's why they are called tertiary consumers. And this kind of a dependency which you see here, so all the energy is coming from sun. Now in terms of energy, as the energy passes through the system, so we will be studying it in the energy flow, but let me just tell you here only so that it is in your keep this concept at the back of your head every time, is that the amount of energy that sun gives to the planet, primary producers use even uh, around or less than 1% of that energy. Okay, so from sun to primary producer there is 1% energy conversion or energy flow. This is the only step where there is a 1% rule. From rest afterwards, from primary producers to primary consumers, there is 10% rule. 10% energy flows on average. So let's say, to begin with, if sun gives 1 lakh joules of energy, 1 lakh, how much will primary producers plant capture from 1 lakh?
10,000.
Sorry,
10,000.
1,000, right?
Oh, yes, 1,000.
So sorry, you're saying 10,000 or 1,000?
I was saying 10,000, but then it's 1,000 though.
It's 1% rule, no?
Yes,
From
that's
1 lakh it will
1%.
be
Yeah.
1,000.
Yeah, I thought it's
Yeah,
10%.
correct.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
1,000.
So here only it's 1%. So that's the only thing you have to remember. From sun to primary producers. So it will be 1,000. When it will, so 1,000 of energy here. Then when primary consumers will eat, how much will go here?
100.
100 joules. Then to secondary,
10 and 1.
10 joules and 1 joule. If it is following this, it can also directly, tertiary consumer can also directly feed on primary producers and get 100 joules. It can also directly feed on primary consumers and get 10 joules. Sorry, here it will get 1,000, 100, 10, 1. It can get directly 100 or 10, or if it will eat the secondary consumer, it will get only 1%. So that's why tertiary consumers are more complex and they are omnivorous. Man and what else? Crows are omnivorous. All other omnivorous organisms are at benefit because they can survive on both sources of energy. But for secondary consumers, it's very important that there are enough number of primary consumers always present so that they can sustain. That's why now you understand how ecological setup is set. In a jungle, what do you see more in number, deers or tigers?
Deers.
Can it ever happen that in a jungle there are 100 deers and 1,000 tigers? Will that jungle sustain?
No.
Yes, but the opposite is possible. 1,000 deers and only 10 tigers, right? That is possible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, in fact, that is what happens. Is it clear? Yeah. So for productivity, there are few concepts that you have to understand. Write down. How will you define primary production? So this From sun to, please write, make this, note this down. Am I audible, people? It's showing that my internet is not stable. Am I audible to you, people?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, your audio is lagging. Let me do this. Can you hear me still? Can someone just test saying something?
Yes, sir.
You're audible.
Yeah, great. You are also audible to me now. Thank you. So let's keep it like this for a moment, okay? So that you can hear me properly and I can hear you properly. Maybe it's problem on my side. I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, but I was saying, please draw this and let me know when you're done so that I will start defining some concepts, important concepts. If you can't speak, write in the chat when you're done. And if there is any questions, please ask, don't hesitate. Also, one thing, so this red line signifies feeds on. Oh, I should write it with red. So you can write on this red line, feeds on, okay? Okay. Okay, so everyone is done? Yeah. So there are few concepts that needs to be first. Let's define it and put it forward. First is, how will you define the primary production, the first overall production that plants do, harvesting the energy from the sun, because that is the first, the most important biomass that comes. Everything from there onwards is the 10% rule for energy, and also for biomass. So we will talk about biomass later, but let's first define primary production. So write down primary production. It is the amount of biomass, or when I say biomass, I mean organic matter. Okay, fruits, leaves, stem, seeds, everything that plant produces. It is the amount of organic matter or biomass produced by the photosynthetic plants, and other photosynthetic organisms. Amount of organic matter or biomass produced by photosynthetic plants majorly and other photosynthetic organisms. But remember the word photosynthetic. Per unit area, per unit area, per unit time. Simple, right? Per unit area, per unit area, per unit time. For example, how much biomass did all the plants together combined in a forest produced per meter in a year? Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how will we define it? Sorry, what will be the unit? What can I use as a unit of primary production? For example, I use the unit of speed as kilometer per hour. So I say that this bike is going by 20 kilometer per hour. How can I say that this forest is doing the primary production by XX? What is the unit?
Meter square per second.
Meter square is the area. Per second is time. So meter square per second does not tells us. It's again, you are saying that meter square per second, right? What is it?
Yes, sir.
But that's what information is it giving us about the production? Production can happen in two. We can divide it in two forms. Either what is being produced is the weight, right? Biomass, or the energy, correct? Think in this term. Meter square per second is area per time. Area per time is not what is being produced. Weight per area per time is what being produced. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So if I say that, if I express the primary production in terms of weight only, so I will use here some 101 physics. You have studied the chapter units, right? Units, I don't know, like it was there when I studied physics. Do they teach you about units, how to find units of different
Yes, sir, last year.
last year? Okay, so you must be knowing then. Weight is like if the primary production is in terms of weight, then I will be talking about gram or kilogram per meter square, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes or no? So it can be kilogram per meter square or gram per meter square, anything, but weight per area. If it is primary production is weight. If the primary production is energy, what will I say?
So joule per.
Yes, calories, joules. So let's say the kilocalorie. Let's take the standard one. Kilocalorie again per meter square. So per unit area, how much weight is being produced in the jungle, or per meter square, whatever organisms are being added or produced, or new plants, new leaves, what is the energy that they are worth? If I eat that, if herbivores eat that, well, how much energy they will get? We can define it in two ways, right? So this is This is the absolute, but I also said per unit time. So when we take time into consideration from physics, you must be knowing that anything over time is known as the production over time will be called rate, correct? So now if we have figured out production, now we want to see the production per unit area per unit time also. So it is called rate of biomass production. Is it clear, people?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And this is separately defined as productivity. So when we say that this jungle has X productivity, so which means I'm talking about rate. So people say productivity rate. So now there is a factor of time included. So what will I now include here? Taking this into account, what will be the unit of productivity? Again, either it could be gram or kilogram per meter square. Can I write -2 here? You know what it means, right? It is per meter square, right? -2 inverse.
Yes, sir.
Gram per meter square per year or per month or per week, whatever you want to define as. So unit becomes gram per meter square per year. Mass per unit area per unit time. This is the unit of productivity. In terms of energy, what will it be? You tell me.
Kilocalories meter square inverse, year inverse.
Here inverse. Correct? Everyone understood the difference between productivity rate, which is the rate of biomass production, and primary production itself?
Yes, sir.
No doubts, right? Cool. Now there are two more concepts that we have to understand. One is called gross productivity or gross primary productivity. Any idea what is this? And the other is net primary productivity or net productivity. I'm using the word primary because I'm only taking into consideration the production which is caused by plants in the forest. I'm not taking into account what animals go on further to produce, because that will be more complex. So let's just build with autotrophs now. So gross primary productivity, its short form is GPP, and net primary productivity. Do you know the difference between gross and net, anyone? NPP.
GPP would be the entire thing that plants produce, and NPP would be the ones, GP minus the ones that the plants use themselves.
Which the plants use themselves, but something that the plant use themselves is also in plant only, no?
Yes, so
Animal can come and
yeah, but
so you are saying that yes, complete yourself. Sorry.
So I was saying that NPP would equal to GP minus the foods they consume themselves.
Yes, exactly, you're right, but I'm saying that what they consume themselves. For example, plant produces 1 kg glucose starch, 500 grams it put in fruits that animals can eat. 500 grams it used itself and grow in size, but that is still there, no? Some animal can come and eat the plant also.
That's a release in environment.
Sorry?
The ones that's released in environment and not for use.
Yes, right. So gross productivity is, is the entire productivity. Gross, everything included. The total amount of production that has happened through photosynthesis. Net is gross minus what the plant lost to the environment. The plant did not even keep it with itself, or did not put it in fruits, or could not pass it to animals. But what it lost, to environment. And how do we lose energy to lose energy to environment? All of us, plants, animals, anything. How do we lose energy to environment?
The form of heat.
Heat. Yes. Oh, sorry, forget about it. We are not talking about energy, we're talking about mass here. Productivity. How do we? Yes, energy we lose in form of heat. Correct answer.
And respiration, yeah.
Yes, every time we are breathing out, what are we breathing out?
Carbon dioxide.
And where did that come from?
Energy and oxygen.
So, energy and oxygen is produced in the cell. That's there. What got broken down into CO2? Glucose.
Glucose.
Right? Glucose went inside the cell. It has 6 carbon. It got broken down into pyruvate. Finally, towards the very end, broken down into CO2, and CO2 is released from our lungs, right? So CO2 has a carbon and 2 oxygen. So it has some weight, right? It has some mass. So every time we are breathing out, we are losing some mass to the environment. Same thing plants are doing. When they are respiring, they are also breaking down glucose, losing CO2. Animals are doing the same. Okay, so this is something which cannot be avoided. It's not like plants are producers, so they will only keep producing. They also need to utilize and consume what they produced. But we still call them producers because they are the only ones that can produce directly, harvesting the energy from the sun. Does that make sense, everyone? Make sense, people? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
So let's define these two terms. First, write down the GPP, gross primary productivity, of an ecosystem. The GPP of an ecosystem is the total rate of production, or is the overall rate of production, is the overall rate of production of organic matter. You can also write biomass, of organic matter or biomass through the process of photosynthesis. Through the process of photosynthesis. Okay, done.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now let's define NPP, net primary productivity. Write down the net primary productivity, or NPP, is the amount of biomass, which is available for the consumption, of heterotrophs, to heterotrophs. Sorry, heterotrophs include both herbivores and carnivores, or omnivores, all. So available for consumption to heterotrophs after respiratory losses, from GPP by the plant. After respiratory losses from the GPP by the plants, or by the photosynthetic system, or you can say by the primary producers. Anything you can use, but you understood the concept, right? You can define it any way you feel better. Okay, you don't have to mug up one bookish definition and write it all the time. You understood everything, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Great. So this is all about primary production. Okay, so if I try to write it as of write this as of in the form of an equation, can I do that? Can I say that GPP, which is produced completely, minus respiratory loss, let's say it RL, respiratory losses, will result in NPP. Can I write this? Or in a way I can say that NPP is equal to GPP minus respiratory losses, correct? Where RL is respiratory loss. Correct, people?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. So now there is another concept called secondary production. You don't have to study details of secondary production because this is the most complex. This is how we built our bodies, animals are born, eggs and everything. So primary production is one which we will study about, but know that what is secondary production. I think someone can just define it now based on the knowledge of primary production. Secondary production, simple. Try, people, at least try, if you're wrong, it's okay. But not trying is not okay. Secondary production is, write down, it is the rate of production, the rate of production of new organic matter by consumers. Rate of production new organic matter by consumers after feeding on NPP, right? This is what consumers get, right? For example, when a deer or cattle eat the grass or the plants, then they give rise to babies, or they themselves grow in size, they develop, or they give birth to babies. These babies also grow in size. So basically, where is this baby coming from? All this energy to produce babies or reproduce or grow in size is coming from this net primary productivity only, right? Which is available to them to eat. Then they will also produce something, and they will also lose a lot of things as respiratory loss, and then the secondary consumer will lead to tertiary productivity. Right? They will eat and they will produce new babies or their body size and so on. So it will keep going through the trophic levels, and every time it will go, you have to factor in that there were respiratory losses in the environment. That's why this 10% rule comes for energy flow. Okay, and it's obvious, in a day, how much food by weight do you eat on an average? You tell me. Any average humans, how many times do we eat in a day on an average? 3 times, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Yes,
Yes.
let's consider 2 times. And what would be the approximate weight of the food that we are consuming in one day? Let's say per plate you are consuming around 200 grams, which is like a very lower range I am putting up, 200 grams. Okay. 1 katori dal, 1 chapat, like 2 chapatis, 3 chapatis, some salads and something else. 200 grams easily you will eat, right, in one meal. So let's say including breakfast, which is lighter, let's say 100 grams in a day, very easily we consume somewhere around 500 grams of by weight the food, correct, which includes both animals and plant products. Do you agree with me, everyone?
Yes, sir.
So in a week we are consuming 3.5 kgs. In a month around 14 kgs. In a year you can do 14 into 12. Okay, so around 168 kgs, around 170 kgs in a year we eat, and from that we absorb also. We do not absorb everything, we remove things, we remove the bulk of the matter as waste every day. So let's say from 170 kg per year we absorbed something. How much will be absorbing? Let's say even if we are absorbing from 170 kg, we are absorbing 30 kgs, correct? But do we gain 30 kgs normally every year and constantly keep gaining 30 kg per year in our weight?
No.
After one point of time we don't gain our weight only, right? Where does all this energy goes? We maintain a weight, we maintain our body weight as in a range which does not go beyond a point, but we keep eating throughout life. So where does all that go? So if some carnivores will hunt on a human and will eat a human, and that human lived for 30-40 years, in 40 years it did consumed a lot of net NPP, okay, but its dry weight stayed the same. So most of it gets lost in respiratory loss. We breathe every day, we breathe 12 times a minute, 12 to 15 times a minute, and continuously we keep breathing, we keep making energy, keep breaking glucose. So that's where all of it goes, mostly in repair, wear and tear, management, fighting diseases, making energy in our body. Okay, do you understand? So actually for all the energy that we take, we only pass on to the next trophic level just the 10% of it. Make sense? Why just 10%, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, cool. So primary and secondary production both are clear, and secondary production will depend on NPP and primary production will depend on what? 4 options: GPP, NPP, both of these, none of these. Primary production will depend on GPP, NPP, both of these, none of these. And I told you secondary production will depend on NPP. Come on, this is a question for you. If I end up giving the answer, there's no point asking the question then. Someone has to answer or we can move forward.
GPP.
No, none of these. GPP primary production does not depend on GPP. Primary production is GPP. Primary production depend on raw material and energy from sun. That's what we discussed in the first place. Sometimes none of the above option is also the correct option. This was just to trick you. Is it clear, everyone? Is it clear? Yes, no? It was an important concept. So if it's not clear, please discuss and ask. Is it clear? I assume that it's clear to all of you. Okay. So now let's go to decomposition. So this is about primary, this is about productivity, the everything that we had to study. Now let's go to decomposition. Decomposition in ecosystem. Because there is production, and you can just understand why decomposition is important, because no system can continue producing something forever. Because it's not like you produce something, then you excrete it out, and that excreted substance is just thrown away, then you produce something new, because you will run out of raw materials. Earth is finite, so there are finite resources in every ecosystem. So what we have to do is, or what ecosystem has to do is, it has to decompose the earlier production which was thrown out as a waste, or which was present in the body of the organism, whether it's a plant or an animal. So it has to decompose that, bring it all back to the system as a raw material, so that new production can take place. Correct? Make sense? So decomposition is very important of the biomass. Now, first things first, write down, let's define it. What do we mean by decomposition? So write down, breaking down of complex organic matter. Breaking down of complex organic matter into simpler inorganic substances. Into simpler inorganic substances, and these substances again act as nutrients for the primary producers. Simple inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, water, oxygen, calcium, magnesium, nitrogen, phosphorus, etc., which act as nutrients. Okay, this is decomposition in an ecosystem. Correct? Is that clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
And the thing which is decomposed is called, decomposition happens, or I should not mark here, I should mark here. So this organic matter that we discussed, which is getting decomposed, okay, this organic matter which gets decomposed is called detritus. What it is called? Detritus. So you can write detritus is the dead plant and animal remain, including fecal matter. That is dead plant or animal remain, including the fecal matter. All this needs to be decomposed into simpler substances. Is it clear? And who does this decomposition? So this detritus is decomposed by who?
Bacteria, fungus.
Yeah. So what are these organisms commonly called together?
Decomposers.
Yes, they are called detritivorous. Okay, you're right. They can also be called decomposers. They are called detritivorous because they decompose the detritus. So the name comes from here. Earthworm is a very well-known detritivorous, also known as farmer's friend. Okay, so example you can write as earthworm, fungi, and bacteria. Heterotrophic bacteria. Bacteria can also be autotrophic, so that's why always I mention heterotrophic bacteria. So if you are also giving an example in your exams, be very specific if you don't want to lose marks. Okay. Earthworms are never autotrophic, so you just write earthworms, not a problem. That's why give more relevant examples first, more relevant from the day-to-day life. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, now having said that, so you know all of this. Now, how does this decomposition happen? So this decomposed by detritivores, how? Next question is the process or the mechanism. Now, there are multiple ways by which it happens, and these methods are not in sequence. They can also happen together. One can be happening, the other cannot be happening. All of them are happening at the same time, etc., etc. So first thing that happens is fragmentation. And it's not the fragmentation that you are thinking, that we have studied in asexual reproduction in lower organisms, but it is, the concept is same, that you break down. So here the fragmentation is happening of this detritus. So physically breaking down the detritus into small particles. Write down. Fragmentation is physical breakdown of detritus into smaller particles. Make sense? Second thing that can happen with this detritus is called leaching. Any idea what is leaching, people? So this detritus, as it will be breaking down, it will have some component which will be water soluble. Okay, so the water soluble nutrients present in the detritus, as the water go down into the soil, seeps into the soil, they also seeps and get precipitated in the soil. Okay, so it is write down water soluble inorganic nutrients, water soluble inorganic nutrients present in the detritus. Go down into the soil and get precipitated. Okay, so how many of you know about groundwater? People often in areas drink groundwater. So they put a hand pump or the bore well, basically a pipe inside the ground, and they harvest the groundwater, the water which is present inside the ground. You know about that, people?
Yes, sir.
And then you must also be knowing that at some places people complain that this groundwater is very salty. Groundwater is a source of fresh water, right? It should not be salty, but at some places it has some dissolved calcium salts and they call it khara pani. Yeah, it has a different taste. It tastes a bit weird or salty, right? This often happens in areas where leaching, a lot of detritus is getting leached and the nutrients is getting leached from that detritus into the lower layers of the soil. Make sense, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Makes sense, right? Cool. So that's leaching. The third way by which you can degrade a detritus is called enzymatic catabolism. It means biochemical breakdown through enzymes. And as you know, enzymes are produced in living system only. So this is done by whom? Bacteria and fungi. Okay. The first fragmentation was being done by earthworm. Earthworm was breaking it down, eating and breaking it down physically. This final is done by, write down, bacteria and fungi. Bacteria and fungi degrade the detritus into inorganic compounds through enzymatic action, through enzyme action. Through enzyme action. Is that clear, everyone? If you're noting down, please let me know when you're done. Yes, let's not rush because some people are writing in the chat. Yes, take your time, no issues. Please let me know, people, when you're done noting this. Okay, everyone is done. Good. Thank you for informing. Okay, so as I told you, all these steps are not sequential. I've written it as 1, 2, 3. Does not mean they only happen as 1, 2, 3. So just make an important note that these steps can operate simultaneously on the detritus. So, which means that at the same time, when an earthworm is eating a detritus, which is we have defined above, and it is breaking down physically inside its gut. Inside the gut, there might also be bacteria which are producing certain enzymes, or the earthworm itself is producing certain enzymes to also during fragmentation do the enzymatic catabolism. And then when it is removing it from its gut, whatever is water soluble is getting leached into the soil at the same time. Is it clear, everyone? How is it happening simultaneously? Right? Okay. Is that clear? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Now, another thing is that not all detritus is water soluble and very easy to decompose. Okay, some detritus are you can say very resistant to microbial action. Okay, some detritus have lots and lots of nutrient logged in them, but they do not undergo decomposition at a faster rate. They decompose. Every detritus decompose in nature, but some detritus decompose at very slow rate. You cannot decompose them very fast. Okay, and these kind of detritus, are they beneficial, or can you what do you think? Are they beneficial or they are harmful? They are beneficial in a manner that they constantly keep a steady state of supply of nutrients to the soil. If all the detritus can be easily broken down and can easily leach, then very fast all the detritus will just break down and leach inside the soil, and the upper layer of the soil will become infertile because it will be devoid of nutrients. So this kind of detritus that is resistant to microbial action and decomposes very slow is called as humus. You must have heard this term humus in your junior classes, that adding humus to the soil makes the soil more fertile. Yeah, you understand? Yes, Mamuna, see, you can technically you can leave the class at any given time, but thank you for asking me. I will anyways, this is the last topic that I will be doing. It's called humification. So I'll be talking about humus and mineralization, and that's where this topic ends. So if you can just stay for 5 more minutes, I'm finishing in 5 minutes. So will you stay for 5 more minutes, Mamuna? Okay, okay, cool. Thank you so much. Yes, so I understand that you people are having exams also, but so these are also some important concepts that you should just discuss. Yes, thank you. So let's talk about that. So I was saying that some detritus is resistant to microbial action. Okay, and it's called humus. And humus makes the soil more fertile, as we know from our junior classes. And humus is what is added, farmers buy and add to their fields and crops, or even humus can be formed by the farmers in a long run. Okay, so it's called humification of soil. The concept is humification. Humification, which leads to, let's define humification right down. Humification is the process which leads to accumulation accumulation of amorphous. So they are amorphous. If you have studied the chemistry, there are amorphous crystals, anamorphous. So you know these shapes. So these are amorphous substances. Amorphous. They are mostly very dark colored substances like black. Their texture is like a semi-stone. Dark colored, amorphous, dark colored, highly resistant to bacterial degradation. Yes, highly resistant to bacterial degradation and undergoes decomposition very slowly at a slow rate. And this substance is known as humus. Okay. So if this starts getting accumulated in soil, it's called humification of soil. Okay. And one thing about humus that you should know and also remember it for your entrance. This is a neat question that was asked, that which of the following is described in the sentence below? And the sentence was a colloidal substance which act as a reservoir of nutrients, that is humus. Okay, so humus is colloidal in nature. It is a colloidal substance. Colloidal means which is not very soluble in water. It stays as a colloid. Okay, suspended. It does not settles down, but it also does not mixes homogeneously with the water. It stays suspended in the water. Okay, so colloidal substance that serves as a reservoir of nutrients. That's humus. Okay, in soil. That's how it keeps the soil fertile. Okay, everyone, everyone is clear till here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but it's not like that humus is it's resistant to bacterial degradation, but slowly it does degrade. So the last thing that I'm going to tell you is that this humus, you can write down, it can be slowly degraded by certain special bacteria and microbes. So write down, it can be slowly degraded into inorganic substances. Okay, or these inorganic substances are minerals. Inorganic substances or minerals by certain bacteria, certain microbes. Okay, and when this happens, when humus gets decomposed into minerals, this process is called mineralization of the soil. Okay, mineralization of soil. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that's all you need to know about decomposition and productivity. In the next class, that's tomorrow, we will talk about energy flow and nutrients cycling. Maybe not nutrient cycling. Tomorrow, let's do energy flow and ecological pyramids or energy pyramids. energy, mass, everything. So we will learn about pyramids. And then before going to nutrient cycling, let's take nutrient cycling in the end. And let me first talk about ecological succession. Okay, so that we'll do in tomorrow's class. Energy flow, ecological succession, and ecological pyramids. These are all, again, the concepts you would like to know and remember. So see you all tomorrow. Anyone has any doubts, you can ask. Others can leave.